David Quadrelli alongside Chris Faber here at the Scotia Barn in beautiful Burnaby, British Columbia, just a stone's throw away from the street named after Burnaby Joe Sakic Way. Now, what can the Canucks take away from the Colorado Avalanche's Stanley Cup victory?
All right, we're not doing that. We're here to talk about a Vancouver Canucks surprise scrimmage, really, is what we kind of
A little
saw.
scrimmage today.
Yeah.
They did scrimmage. And what did you see in that scrimmage?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of excitement right off the top when we saw the opening pairing coming out for Team Blue, and it was Oliver Ekman-Larsson on the left side and Quinn Hughes on the right side. So this rumor of Quinn Hughes potentially moving to the right side, it didn't take long. Our first scrimmage that we get to see with the full team on the ice, he's playing the right side along with Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I know it's a summer skate and it's a scrimmage and it's not a ton to take away, but man, if I'm taking away one big thing from this scrimmage, it's the fact that they went right to OEL and Quinn Hughes, and we've talked about this in the past on the podcast, on a lot of the articles at Canucks Army. This really changes what the defense core could look like if there's a situation that plays out.
There's a lot that goes into switching to the right side, and obviously the rumor you're talking about is Jim Rutherford coming out and saying that Quinn Hughes has informed the club that he's willing to try playing on the right side. Obviously the Canucks have a lot of left-handed defensemen, not a ton of right-handed defensemen, so as you just kind of alluded to, having their best defenseman in Quinn Hughes able to successfully switch to the side where they're very weak at, that's a massive win for the club if he's able to do it. And again, folks, this was a very informal skate. We don't know the score of the scrimmage because it didn't seem like anybody was keeping score.
Well, somebody was, because we did see a goalie get pulled at the end of the scrimmage for Team White. And just to speak on the Quinn Hughes playing on the right side again, there was a play where he sets up a pass onto Podkolzin's stick, and it's something we've talked about. Like, the offense looks so much different for a left shot guy if he's on the right side. Just from the view of the ice that you have as a left shot guy on the right side is so wide open. So it could be somewhere where we start to see more shot opportunities, just more good plays like we saw today in the scrimmage. And I know it's just a scrimmage, but watching Quinn Hughes be able to kind of have a one-time wrist shot right onto the stick of Podkolzin's and into the back of the net, like it all looked great, at least in the scrimmage. And we know it's just a summer skate, but there was definitely some things to take away. I do want to bring up Andrey Kuzmenko as well before we get to Elias Pettersson, because those two were playing together. They connected on a goal in the scrimmage as well. And I mean, it's nice to see a player that we have a little bit of worries about transitioning to the NHL be able to just look like he was at home on a line with a guy like Elias Pettersson, who, by the way, looked absolutely excellent today. There was just good pace in his game, good stick handling. Like, he was, he's more dangly than I've seen him in the last little bit. Like, he had really good hands and was pulling a lot of maneuvers that you just look at him and you're like, that's Elias Pettersson for sure. You didn't have to have numbers on the back of their helmets, like you could absolutely tell when Elias Pettersson had the puck. He looked great in the skate, and it was nice to chat with him after as well.
Again, Vasily Podkolzin told us that the biggest difference between the KHL and the NHL is speed, doing everything at high speeds. And Andrey Kuzmenko looked like he was able to do everything at a high speed state. Like you said, playing on a line with Elias Pettersson, had a nifty little pass to him to set up the one-timer when everybody, including the goaltender, who I believe was Mikey DiPietro in net at the time, thought he was going to shoot. Feeds over to Elias Pettersson, who made no mistake on the one-timer. Sounds like I'm doing play-by-play now, but Andrey Kuzmenko did look very comfortable with Elias Pettersson is the point I'm trying to make. Elias Pettersson spoke as well. What did you take away from Elias Pettersson's first press conference with the media this season?
Well, speaking of comfortable, that's what Pettersson looked like with us in the media. I mean, it wasn't a massive scrum like we saw with Bo Horvat yesterday, but Pettersson had a lot of jokes throughout, and I think the interesting thing was kind of just hearing, in my eyes, like taking away how mature he sounded, right? It really sounded like he looked back at last season and he really kind of evaluated how everything went, whether it be the slow start and the coaching change and having success in the second half of the season. I was blown away with just the maturity, I guess, in his game. And I mean, this is a guy who mentioned that, he isn't a young guy anymore. He's a guy who's been around this league for a couple of years. And man, I found it really interesting. I know you want to speak on this more, but like, no excuses either about what the bad start was for Pettersson.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Pettersson's wrist was brought up because that was obviously bugging him at the start of last season, and he told us as much. He didn't have the right stick for a period of time due to all the supply chain issues that come with the pandemic. So Pettersson didn't really want to talk about any of that, though. Those were brought up to him by a member of the media, and he basically said, no, I don't really want to make any excuses. And he put the onus on himself to have a better start this season. Did a lot of reflecting on last season, he said. And look, by all accounts, looking forward to a better start for Elias Pettersson this season.
Yep, and I mean, just getting to see him on the ice once was good enough. I mean, you could tell right off the bat, like, this guy's been working in the offseason. He probably has something to prove this year, wants to be a guy who gets to close to point per game. And I guess just kind of as we wrap up here, the other players on the ice, like, this was a large group. This was the AHL players, the Young Star players, the NHL players, all mixed into one big group today. We also did see Quinn Hughes on the ice for the first time, saw guys like Jack Rathbone out there for the first time. So everybody's in town now, everybody's on the ice. The only two guys that I didn't really notice that I noticed weren't there from the NHL roster anyways were Tyler Myers, Travis Dermott, but these guys have been out here at the skates before, maybe a maintenance day, some sort of situation like that. But we did see some interesting parts about the defensive pairings, and I don't want to get too much into line combinations at this point, but I did find it interesting that Tucker Pullman, he's playing the left side with Luke Schenn, and the right side thing with Quinn Hughes, man, it was interesting to see just how that dynamic of OEL and Quinn Hughes worked, because I know it's a summer skate. Don't give me that look, Quads, but I'm just saying, like, it was interesting to watch how Hughes plays on the right side.
I was going to say, cut the video right now. Faber just threw out Tucker Pullman and Luke Schenn as a defense pairing that he must see on opening night. In all seriousness, though, it was a good first skate for Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes. And again, Quinn Hughes on the right side, I think that's going to be the thing that we're watching as we move toward training camp here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the biggest stories. The defense core is something that we're talked about so much with this Vancouver Canucks team, and if you're putting your best player into that position to kind of make things a little bit better on the back end, if it works, it's going to be great for the rest of this defense core.
Again, opens up Jack Rathbone to make the team, guy who was a point-per-game player in the AHL last season. He's going to be somebody that they're looking to graduate into the NHL group, and it frees up Luke Schenn, a guy who played on the first pairing alongside Quinn Hughes last season. Luke Schenn's now able to slide down to the third pair to play with Jack Rathbone in a similar role. David Quadrelli, Chris Faber, here for Canucks Army.